Hi again, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of The Next Chapter, a podcast featuring alumni from the College of Fine Arts and Communication here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon, and I'm the host of the podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with DJ Alstadt, a graduate from the School of Music back in 1999. Is that right, DJ?
That's
Am
right.
I getting that correct?
You got it. You've done your homework. Nice work.
Yes, no, and not only that, on the very first episode, I'm so thankful that you are the person that agreed to be on it, because you've received multiple awards from the School of Music and College of Fine Arts and Communication for being a distinguished alumni. And so we have always been proud of you and very thankful that of what you've accomplished over the years, DJ. And so we're going to start off with a nice conversation, just talking about things that have happened to you along the way. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's go all the way back to your beginnings. I believe you're from Sandwich, Illinois.
That's correct. Sandwich is 60 miles west of, southwest of Chicago. So it's now it's getting closer to the suburbs, but when I grew up there, there was nothing out there. I mean, it was just a lot of farmland but a really charming area and community to grow up in. And the reason why I say that is that there is, I attended church every week, and my dad is a very sports-oriented guy. He was baseball. He's in for umpiring and all these inductee Hall of Fame things, and so I really loved baseball. And one day we were running late to church, and I think I was in 5th grade at the time, and it was one of those Sunday night music services, and we had to sneak in, and we got in the front row, and this missionary was there. His name was Frank Gonzalez, and he played trumpet, and I had never heard the trumpet played at my face at that intensity level, and I was just blown away by the sound. Well, it just so happened the following 2 days later, they'd had band instrument demo days, and I'm like, trumpet, right? And I was really fortunate. My junior high band director, my high school band director were trumpet players, and I just had a magnificent leading there from there. So,
where do you think the love of music was it from your family? Was it just being in that community? Where do you think the inspiration for music came from in the Sandwich, Illinois life?
That's a great question. And my mom is she's really accomplished pianist, but not formally taught. And so she can sit down and play tunes by ear. She can pick up the guitar and play. And I just remember being immersed in music as a child. And I mean, we go through her record collection, you don't know what a record is, the vinyl, the big black CDs.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And just one after another. And it was always on. And so another thing that they kind of encouraged me, we have this beautiful thing called the Sandwich Opera House. And if you're not familiar with the Sandwich Opera House, there's like a bunch of adults that meet there that are from the Fox Valley area. And so at a young age, I was taking theater acting lessons in the summertime, going to camps, singing. And before I knew it, I was in elementary, junior high school in full-on musicals with adults. And it was great. I learned how to sing. I learned how to, great vocal technique and developing the presence on the stage. And in conjunction with experiences with my elementary band, junior high band, along with, I was probably more of a choir kid, honestly, when I was younger. I just loved to sing and sing in my church choir. And that was a real big influence on me. And so that funneled in. And while I was in high school, if I may, Sandwich is like one of those types of communities that's a little bit different from where I'm at right now. So right now, if a kid is in our top jazz band, that's all they do. And they have to commit to the varsity jazz band. And when I grew up in Sandwich, I was in, not only jazz band, but the drama club, the theater club, speech team. I had a part-time job. I was what other things?
Did you say you ran track too?
I ran track. I was in the chemistry club, the speed, you name it. And what's great about being in Sandwich, Illinois, is that the faculty work together and put a schedule together in these types of communities where a kid can do all those different things. And, but yeah, we should come back to that track component, because that really helped me later on in life. I've always loved running. I'm terrible at it, but it's so yeah, but please.
Yeah. So, DJ, I wanted to ask you that I know a lot of young people, even though they become very enthusiastic about the opportunity to, play an instrument, for example, when they get to high school, somehow they just don't have the discipline, or, as you said, maybe the routine, the availability to continue to do that instrument. But somehow that appealed to you and allowed, that to grow as one of your skills.
Well, I cannot really take any credit. I mean, we're chameleons, right? So we're kind of almost like what we're surrounded by. And interesting enough, my high school band director was also an alum from the Western Illinois University School of Music. So
nice.
As a kid, I was constantly going out to Western. So like the jazz band and the wind ensemble and all the teachers there, they all kind of they walked on this level of, just hierarchy that I always really respected. And so what was great about what my high school band director did, Mr. Terry Wickwire, who I still keep in contact with and is just a towering figure of influence to me, was he exposed me to a lot of great things. So like jazz, he had me listening to, the great jazz bebop trumpet artists, or how to do blues, or orchestral. He was taking us down to the city to hear the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And I remember the first time I heard Festive Overture my freshman year, and then I had hair blowing on the back of my head, and, and then going to, taking us to marching band contests and drum and bugle corps contests in the summer. Like, he was just so involved in our lives. And I just had such a great overall experience of playing the trumpet in all these different venues, that when, as I got, he molded me, and really kind of saw something that I didn't. And by the time I left high school, I was on the road with a group called the Cavaliers Drum and Bugle Corps. And it was funny because, I talk about my friends. We were chameleons. There was 5 of us, and we had 4 of us said we were going to go up and audition for the Cavaliers, and we were either going to become pilots that summer, or we would get, be in this musical touring organization. I was the only one that made it, and the other 3 are now professional pilots. Like, they fly the big jumbos,
Yeah.
So it's kind of amazing. And the only reason why I did make it, circling back to track, was because it came down to me and another person, and they did a test time. And because I'd run, in Sandwich, and I had a great coach, I was able to kind of run a little faster, harder, dig a little deeper, and had the stamina to be able to do it. And I was really, and then from there, that's when things really became clear about how much I just loved the technique of the process of the performance, and to play every other night in a stadium full of people, and to be a part of something really special, of a trumpet section. Kids were from Japan to England to coast to you name it. And I was the youngest one. So I was like a sponge, this kid from Sandwich, and with all these other music majors, and that were, they were 22. I just thought they were Herculean, and, but, they helped. We'd ride on the bus at night, and they'd be like, you should be listening to this and this and this and this. So that was Sandwich. And I was so lucky to have parents that just said, oh, you want to go on the road for 3 months and tour the country and do this? And fine, go. You want to work McDonald's on a Friday night? Great. And I'm so glad I had those experiences, because, it taught me how to work with the public. Oh, you want to do this thing? Okay, go up on stage. And so now when I have to talk in front of our community, I'm not falling apart, and so it really set me up for success to go in whatever direction I wanted to, which is interesting because, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm amazed about how the things that happen within somebody's life, and you're a great example of that, is really just a preparation for where they're going to be later on.
Absolutely. And it doesn't make sense when you're going through it at the time, as we know, right? And hindsight's always the 2020. But I started off, and my uncle at the time was a chief financial officer of a company, and I could see myself having that kind of lifestyle of an upper management, so I started off at another university with another business major. And after macro and micro economics and accounting, and I quickly realized that it probably was not for me. And this was after the summer of doing that touring group. So I happened to be in a jazz band that went to the Western Illinois University once again, right? Here I go back to Western.
Yeah.
And the jazz festival's going on, which brings in, colleges and universities and things like that. And I heard the Western Illinois University Jazz Ensemble, and they had just came off the Crossroads album, which was, I think at that time, 2 colleges or universities had been nominated for a Grammy, them and North Texas University, which is a jazz powerhouse. And I was just blown away by what I heard. I didn't know how to get in there or what it was. And I found out that they had a music business program. I just knew at that moment I needed to be on the campus of Western Illinois University. So I applied, I begged, I wrote letters, and somehow I got lucky. And they said, okay, come on, we'll accept you in. And I was really lucky timing, because I think they kind of took a chance on me. Because normally when a music major comes in, they've been studying and they know that they're going to be a music major. And I walked away from the horn and played in ensembles, but it was definitely, hey, remember me? We made a deal, right? And I guess I could just stop there and just say, so here I am now as a freshman at Western Illinois University.
So what do you remember as your first sort of involvement in terms of anything with an ensemble, or, after you got on campus, what's your first memories of getting involved?
Well, I remember, so this would be the second summer I did that touring music group, and it's intense. It's like 15 hours of rehearsal a day, and, they have just top-notch staff and things like that. So maybe my confidence level, I was like, hey, I've won a national championship. I've been on television. I done this. And, I walk into Western, and they're like, okay, DJ, we're going to have you audition and for our ensemble placement, right? And so I'm waiting in line, and I'm hearing the other trumpet players, and I'm falling apart because, I'm hearing, master students, undergraduate. I mean, and that studio, man, those guys could play. And so that was my first experience, was just nobody had to say a word to me. Like, it was completely humbling. I realized at that moment how far behind everyone else I was. And that's when I met Dr. Briney. And perhaps walking into his studio and just being completely humble and saying, whatever you say goes. I'm going to listen to everything you say. And I would say I failed more than I succeeded during our relationship. But at the same time, I think you have to go through those processes as a musician, and he's a master teacher. And so I could probably do an entire podcast of but I was very lucky. I had, Mr. Dale Hopper at the time.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dr. John Dougal, who was just both icons in the industry. And I could go down my list of just faculty, and I'm embarrassed to not do that. But, everything from music theory to piano to, Dr. McCain with the music business, and just everything, Dr. Caldwell, just being so patient with me as I learned music theory, because it was like Greek to me. It was just like this whole other language that I'd never learned before. Every day I walked in, and it felt like everybody else around me knew what was going on, and I was like the only one that didn't. And maybe there's some truth to that.
Oh, I'm sure that there's some immersion in that where all the students feel that at that moment, like, there's a little bit of self-doubt, but then what happens, fortunately, as you said, I think the faculty will at some point be able to give you just a nugget that gets you, the self-confidence that gets you moving forward in a particular manner. Because as you said, the competition, I'm sure, was intense with all the other students that were just magnificent as well. And I'm sure the part of what I love about music ensembles is the relationships that happen between the young people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a great question, because I mean, the thing that I learned through the years was to find the oldest kids in the ensemble and the best ones, and see who will let you hang out with them and try to be friends with them, right? And who are the best. And so I in the practice rooms, that's where I developed those relationships. You see the same people down at the same spots at the same time, and you just kind of, you start talking to them, and they mentor you. Because if you're genuinely like working and they hear you in the practice room just doing it all wrong, and they know that you're working, the community comes to your aid. I mean, it's like, Dr. Briney always used to say this to me. He's like, when the student is ready, a teacher will appear. And that teacher could be a peer, it could be, a friend, it could be. And I was so fortunate about the people that I went to school with. They were so generous and kind. And I'm not just saying this, like, there was a genuine camaraderie between all of us. Was there competition? Sure, absolutely. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we were all just trying to be the best that we could, and pick each other up and lift one another and give each other tips. And some of my favorite friends from college were, on certain nights we would just meet and we'd pick one, or each person would bring an album in, and we'd listen to, Mahler 5 from top to bottom, and the rule was no talking, right? I mean, it was almost like Dead Poets Society, like we drank in the water, but we did. And just falling in love with listening and playing in the ensembles and being around in peers. Was it, again, I don't want to romanticize anything. It was hard work. Yeah. It was a lot of failure. And it was, but at the same time, from a learning standpoint, it was the most magical time of my life. I mean, just learning about myself and music. I wouldn't trade those years or anything for anything. So, I hope that answers. Yeah,
there's just so many wonderful opportunities that I think that this university provides for our young people. And as you said, I think eventually the students are rooting for each other in a way that, as you said, even though you're competing with each other, you're hoping for that personal growth, not only in yourself, but for the people that you're around, because you really start to care about their development as well. And I think that's really important. I want to talk a little bit about your time here, DJ. You were also a Fellheimer Scholar, which I think we still see the benefits of that. I can tell you as a Wesley Church member that we value and appreciate every person that comes from the School of Music that contributes and just shares their talent. It's such a joy to have. And I'm sure that was important for you.
Buzz, thank you for opening the door for that, because, for Mrs. Marsha Molden was the director of all things music at the time. And her husband was a math teacher. And we'll get into this probably later, but I met my wife at Western, and she did a lot of work with Mr. Molden at the time at Macomb High School. It's strange how all these different intersections happen. Right. But what was so beautiful about that was I played in handbell choir. I sang in the choir. Every week I got the opportunity to play my trumpet. But more importantly than doing children's service, playing a harmonica or a different instrument, was really how welcoming the community was to me. I can remember many nights of different homes being opened up, and they'd say, DJ, why don't you come on over for dinner? And here I found myself out of the dorms in someone's home, meeting their kids, playing with a dog. And, you know, I'm so appreciative because it taught me, what they were showing me was, you know, yes, we recognize that you're very transient and you won't be here forever, but how I was embraced, I really felt part of the community. And honestly, so much of what I learned about how to treat people like that might feel out of place in a community was definitely solidified at Western Illinois University, in particular through my Feldheimer experience at, you know, at the church. It's just, I cannot say enough good things about that experience. And then they gave me so much flexibility to bring my friends in to help augment. I got to arrange things that were, you know, no undergraduate should have, you know, the permission to be able to be doing these things. And it really helped me though, because little did I know, as you said earlier, that skill set would then transfer very quickly into a career that I hadn't even decided that's what I wanted to be a major in. So, so that was definitely a high point for me.
As you mentioned, which I was not aware that you met your wife here at Western. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how that happened and how you got together.
Well, that's a great question. We were both in the marching band.
Oh, nice.
And she was a mathematician, but also, so she has a advanced degree in math, dance, and she's always loved color guard. She still coaches a competitive international guard to this day, and they do really well. I mean, I'm just so proud of her. She works so hard. She's a math teacher. But how did we meet? It was very innocent. And this is very, very uncharacteristic of my wife as well. We used to have phone trees that we pass out, and I got a hold of she was in the color guard and phone tree, and they were all eating dinner together. And I walked by a table and I said, "Ladies, I have your phone number. You can expect a phone call from me." And they all kind of laughed and "Get out of here, DJ, you silly," right? And a few days later, I saw Kate, and she said, "Hey, I never got my phone call." And I was like, "Whoa!" And just that little twerk, right? That little moment, and we became friends. And eventually, now we have 2 beautiful children, and we've been married for 20 years, excuse me. So.
That is just a wonderful story, because I tell you, I've heard other ones similar to that where couples meet through marching band. And I just think it's wonderful that somehow that activity brought 2 people together in such a wonderful way. It's just,
and so how do you say thank you? You know, you don't, you just help where you can. So, but no, I'll always be eternally grateful for that.
So among the other things that you did here, DJ, you were also a resident assistant.
Yeah.
How did you have time to do all these things at Western?
Well, they had a practice room down in the and before, as you kind of go through these processes, I used to have to fly out to New York City every 3 or 4 weeks because I was in a different music group out there, similar activity. This one was called the Cadets. Oh, there's a bell. Welcome back to high school, everyone. And so I couldn't afford to fly out to New York City, right? So how do I figure this out? And being an RA, I was able to, through, maybe academics, some scholarships and things like that, just able to work it out where I could get out there. But more importantly, I was able to be where I needed to be. I could practice. I had my own practice space and be a member of what was called a wellness floor. And that was really good for me because I got to get out of there's nothing wrong with being inundated with music majors, but like to live on a floor where no one else is a music major. And we were wellness. It was so we like to lift weights. We lifted weights every night after dinner, right? And I had to negotiate my schedule a little bit and work with some things with sectionals and things like that, but it was very consistent. And I got to work with young men that were now they work for the FBI or they work for, and some of them I keep in contact with, the police officers, state troopers, teachers, lawyers. Some I don't keep in contact with, but a lot of good friends from that time period. And and as you know, as a resident assistant, that comes with kind of a heavy,
Yeah.
responsibility. You got to keep your eye on everybody and make sure everybody's healthy and, help lead. And what that did for me was not to play counselor, but to learn how to access someone that needs help to get the right resource. And as a teacher, that's my job. I am not a counselor. I count to 4. My alphabet stops at G. I don't even try to play that role. But what being an RA taught me was how to have the courage to reach out to someone and to talk to someone else to bring that in. And also that you're always kind of on. Like whenever you walk through, it's like people are watching you all the time. And I kind of figured that out. I'm like, okay, so if I have this role, then I need to do my best at X, Y, and Z. So I was very transparent about my schedule and with people and vice versa. And it was an amazing experience. And conversely, they gave me some flexibility to leave campus. And whenever I didn't have concerts, I was out in New York and playing my little trumpet. And then I'd get on and I'd be back in class on Monday morning. So, and then the summers, as soon as school was out, I was back on the plane and then touring the country. And that was an amazing experience as well, being in a complete different organization that was just as on par with the one in the Midwest. And just some amazing experiences from that as well.
So all this really makes sense in terms of your preparation as a music educator. Doesn't it? I mean, after looking back at this period of time of, your time as a musician, what you're learning in school, you're an RA where you're dealing with people, understanding, watching them. And then how do you then get your first job?
Well, can I just back this up just a little bit? So because I had been in these drum and bugle corps, and I don't know why, I just loved to work with kids. I used to go out to Beardstown. One of my friends got a job out there, and every Monday night I would teach all the brass students, just help them. And I told him, I'm like, I'm a music business major, but like, I've had to take method classes, so I'll do my best, and learned a lot. And then on some weekends that I was free, I would take the train out to different larger programs like this. And because of those experiences, maybe the marching idiom was something, some of the directors found attractive. So I found myself working with bands that were competing nationally, and I would take the train up and then work with them all weekend, and then Sunday night jet back, right? So not when I was an RA at that particular time. And what happened during that time was, as I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'm driving out to help another program out in Pekin, Illinois. That was a long-standing place. I kind of realized that I really liked what the band directors were doing. And I'm like, and they get paid to do that? I'm like, come on, are you kidding me? Like, I would pay to do this. In fact, I'm an RA. I have 15 jobs, so I can go do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I got to switch. So my senior year, right before I was getting ready to start that internship, I switched my major to music ed. I thought my parents were going to just end me, but they did. They were so supportive, and they just, thank goodness, right? And that was a challenging discussion. So I cranked up my hours and had requests to take ridiculous amount of hours. I won't even repeat how many I had to take per semester, but quickly moved through that program and then began my student teaching. And so that was glorious, which is how I landed the student teaching placement.
Okay.
It was through the Office of Education. I don't know how it works now, but it was a little different back in the day. There was a little bit more flexibility and autonomy. So let's go back to the Sandwich Opera House. One of my big mentors there said, you should reach out to my son-in-law, Jim Stombrace at Naperville North High School, and talk to him, because I think that you would be a great student teacher. And I said, Jim Stombrace? Because at that time, Naperville North, Jim Stombrace, icon in the industry, right? For high school teaching. Like, my jaw hit the floor. So I immediately called Mr. Stombrace, and he said, you know what? I've already committed to someone but let me call the director over at Naperville Central and see if we can get you on there. And I said, wow, if I could student teach at Naperville Central High School, everything else in the world would be perfect, because I would be in a position where I could like maybe land on my feet wherever I went, with that under my, with that little check mark. So what happened was I student taught, and my first day was supposed to be January, whatever, like the end of January, and my last day was like April something. I started the first day of the first semester, and I went through graduation, and I did not miss a day. First one out there, last one to leave, and I don't know why. I just loved everything about it and just soaked it in. And Mr. Ken Kaiser, who is retired, his associate conductor transferred, so there was an opening of positions, and I don't know why or how, but I got the job, and maybe it was just from that hard work through the student teaching and the great relationship I had with the director, and there I am, my first year out at Naperville Central High School as the associate director of bands, and I was out of my mind. I couldn't believe it. So, what
a great opportunity! And not only that, DJ, can you talk a little bit about the profile of the high school? Because I think you're talking probably much larger high school than one that you grew up in, right?
Yeah. Well, there's something good about youth, I mean, when you go through music school, it really prepares you at a high level, right? So the best kid in the country that's playing, they still play like a high school kid, right? So there's not a musician that's intimidating, right? But I'll tell you what is intimidating is that when I walked into the school and I started hearing the numbers, I went, so what you're saying is that when this school is in attendance, it's larger than the town I grew up in, right? So that was very humbling, right? And and the faculty were phenomenal. I just remember walking down and shaking hands and like meeting some of the PE teachers and like, oh, he wrestled on this Olympic team. Here's our chemistry teacher who takes everybody every year to David Letterman. This person's Dr. So-and doctors, I'm just like, wow, okay, I'm in over my head, right, with this faculty. And so it was great. I fell in love with the community immediately. I guess Naperville, they say, it's been voted by people that say these things, it's the #1 place to raise a child in America, and there's a reason for that, and we can circle back to this if you'd like, but and I'd like to actually kind of incorporate a little bit of that if that's okay.
Yeah.
Do that now, or
yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
All right. So one of the tenets that, like, as a first-year teacher, what I really kind of bought into was, like, I remember walking through the Riverwalk and seeing, their value system. It's community, and #2, right underneath community and people, is education. Like, and it's in stone, like education. Like, they really believe in like that it takes a village to raise a child, and I love that, because there has to be a strong business compartment. Like, as a band director, we have business partners that help our school. So anytime that business needs anything, we send a group out to meet their needs. Maybe pre-COVID, right? We can talk about post later too, as well. And having our kids being a part of that process as well trains them. So if I have chamber ensembles, what is that? That's a fancy way of saying small groups. Training our student leaders to work with, communicate, and kind of lead them. And they come back and they said, boy, we had a great time. They call me Mr. A, but boy, we need more music. And I open up the file cabinet and I hand that brass quintet a pile more. And before you know it, it's cyclical. They're taking lessons, they're playing more brass quintet, they're getting more positions, we're gonna have more concerts. It's very cyclical. The community loves it, they support us. And we're kind of like, like at Western, we're the front end, one of the front end high, you're visible in your community. So,
that's right.
And partnering with our parents, communication is just absolutely paramount. And it's never a me versus them. I'm really fortunate that when we have an 8th grade night, and one of the first things that we talk about is, how can we partner together for your child? And we have a wonderful parent-based organization called the Band Booster Association, right? And they have all these different committees, and we find a place and a home for everybody's skill set, because not everybody wants to sell wrapping paper, and not everybody, you know, some people are great carpenters, some people are good at, we actually even have musicians that are parents. And so we've really tried to find something for everyone and a way for them to contribute, to give back to our community. And that comes back into, so we've got everything wrapped around the student. And that's where myself and my colleague, Brandon Estes, I cannot believe I've gone this far in an interview without talking about him. He's my colleague and partner in crime here at Naperville Central. And together, we're really fortunate that we have a studio staff that come in, like an expert on each instrument. So like at Western, it would be like the flute professor, right? The trombone professor. We have an adjunct faculty that give lessons to kids during the academic day. So it's modeled after Western, right? But on a smaller level.
And as you said, there are many more elements, and everything from educators like yourself and some of your colleagues, but it does take parent commitment. And of course, you know, what you're trying to do, which I greatly admire, is you are bringing the joy of music to these young people who at some point in their life, much like yourself, were inspired in some way or just want to give it a try. And some may decide to give it up soon, but others will continue on as you have done. And do you ever kind of see sort of that cyclical gift that what you have been given, you are now bestowing to other young people?
That's a great question. And I need to start by saying, you know, my job is to not make music majors. If that was really my core being, I wouldn't work at Naperville Central. I work in a public school system, right? So my job is to honestly make sure that every child, when they graduate from here as a young adult, understands that they've been given such a privilege to make music that they need to keep music in their life, or art. I don't care what it is. If it's their drawing, whatever that is, that needs to stay in their life for life. And that's really my mantra with the kids. Now, you asked that question about kids going on. Yes, but on a really different and large scale. Like, there's been some kids that have gone on where I just sit there and I go, oh my goodness, I cannot believe what you are doing with your life right now. And it's humbling. Okay, here we go. Since you, the first time it really hit me was where the New York Philharmonic plays. You see that white building, and they've got the ballet, right, and the orchestra, right, and then there's Juilliard School of Music, right, all that stuff right in there. Okay, so I flew out for the debut concert of one of my former percussionists, who won a job playing with the New York Philharmonic, and I'm sitting in the audience, and I'm still paying for this ticket to this day. You know, I got the absolute best seat where I could see him. You know, it was the gala opening night, and to see this kid who just graduated with his undergrad out there playing with literally the guys that I grew up listening to as iconic figures, people that I hold on like up here. He's on their stage. He's still there to this day. That was probably that first moment where I went, wow. Okay, so have there been other kids that have gone on and done exceptional things? Yes, and I could go down those lists. And but yeah, so I guess another place that I'm reminded of that is every time we have the Illinois Music Educators Association event, or the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic, which is an international event for people in my profession, and orchestra and choir for the ILMEA. It just amazes me how many kids are from the school and have been in the band program just across the state, across the nation. And I'm really proud of those kids.
As you should be.
Yeah.
As you should be, you know, DJ. And part of that is, and I hope you realize this, and I'm sure you do, you know, all the successes that you've had over the years, whether it was as a performer or even as an educator, every person that took part of your education here at WIU, including Bruce, and I know Bruce, and I can speak because I know him as a person, that he is also taking a little bit of joy in that and having you be successful, just as you did with that young person in that situation.
I can honestly tell you that while I'm up here, and if I turn the camera and show the podium and the music stand, even to this day, I just find myself repeating everything they told me, and I was listening. They might not have thought I was, but I was definitely paying attention. And so to try to live to that, just lead kids to water. It's a very simple philosophy. It sounds easy, but the more you unpack that, it's like, okay, so that means bringing in guests. That means bringing in guest artists. That means this. That means that. So yeah, I definitely am just so grateful. And I'm not saying this for the faculty, my peers, my friends, and the people that are new to the faculty at Western who've been amazing to our program and to our kids through the years. So thank you.
Now that you've got a few years under your belt, I still consider you a very young person. How do you think that you've seen your growth, not only as an educator, but also as a musician? Are they related and connected in some ways, do you think?
That's a great question. I would be foolish if I didn't say I haven't evolved. When I first walked in at Naperville Central and they're like, here's the keys, kid, I'm like, all right, everybody, let's get on a plane. We're going to go here. We're going to go do this. We're going to go do that. And there was just no fear. And now as a dad, I'm like, before I take any trip, before we do anything, there's redundancy plans. And I don't mean the kids weren't safe, because we always had, but there's I'm more cautious when I cross the street now with my band kids, because I get what the kids are and what they mean to someone else. And I didn't get it until I became a parent, I think. So there's been some extracurricular ensembles that I used to work with that I've stepped down from, so I can make sure that not only first and foremost that I'm being a great father, and being a part of my children's life, because it's really easy just to kind of slip off the edge as a band director and just live in this band room. I got to be honest with you. And I can remember my several years where the third shift people were waking me up in the office saying, hey, dude, DJ, go home, and I was in my 20s, right? But you can't keep that. That's not sustainable. And so I guess that would be one of the first things, is realizing you're not unfathomable, and, to that, yes, eating properly, no, gaining 110 pounds in a year and a half is not good for you, which I did, right? Just every mistake that you could possibly make, I think I made it as an educator. And maybe even at Western and here, I still can't believe this has been the only place I've ever worked, because it blows my mind. That's so atypical. But I think there's been a lot of times where people have forgiven me for things because they knew my heart was in the right place, right? And then I learned, right? You learn from your mistakes, and you don't do that again. But for me, if I don't stay in shape, both as physically, as a trumpet player, if I'm not playing, forget it. There's something different on the podium. If I'm not studying my scores and really living what I'm asking the kids to do, if I'm not listening to high quality music, I get burned out. Like, I'm just tired. But when I'm playing my trumpet, I'm taking care of my body, I'm eating the right things, I'm spending time with my children, I'm being with my wife, right? I'm doing all the things. I'm very selective about how I spend my time, but at the same time, I'm completely in the moment, and I'm happier. And it's intense. But I'm able to be in the moment and enjoy it more. And when something's off, I'm just a guy of extremes, Buzz. Like,
yeah.
the wheels have come completely off for me before.
Yeah.
And in rehealing and figuring out what works and what doesn't. So yeah, there's definitely been people and moments of balance that have taken, I don't know what balance means. I still struggle with that word. But at least taking care of yourself and the people that are close to you.
Well, we're at that point in the podcast, DJ, where we rely on your advice, what you've learned over the years to kind of give to a young person that may be considering going to college and studying music, and whether it's music business or it's going into music education, whatever the major may be. What kind of recommendations might you have for a college-aged student?
That's a great question. And I think that my story is atypical. And I guess I would start off by saying I have so many kids in our community where it's, what science will you be going into? Or will you be a lawyer of what kind? That's the premise as they come into high school. I'm like, wow, okay. So that's where we're starting. So listen to that inner voice. This is what I tell kids, is that if you can't see yourself doing anything else but music, then you know you're doing the right thing, or whatever that may be. I guess another thing that I would encourage someone is to really take a lesson with whoever you'll be studying with, because that person is going to be your guide. And perhaps the reason why I talk so much about Dr. Browning is because he was my guide through that experience. He saw me at the absolute top and the bottom and everywhere in between. And your studio teacher will see the same. And the faculty, go and hear the ensembles play. Sit in. They might invite you. Bring your instrument. Sit in. Play. Sing. Be fearless. Because, really, it's your journey. I tell the kids this all the time. I'm like, I don't care how good someone is here at Naperville Central. We've had young arts winners. And I'm like, there's still a kid somewhere else who's already recorded more than you have, that's already done something more, So getting kids comfortable with their own journey and just kind of letting down the walls is really hard to do with an 18-year-old. And, but to kind of chip away and build that relationship and the trust, I would say that is the most important thing. And then when you get in that campus and you feel those people and you're around that environment, be yourself. Don't try to be something you're not, because you're being interviewed as much as they're interviewing, and so don't be afraid to ask questions, reach out to studio teachers, to the ensemble directors, and value their time, respect their time, and they will do the same for you. And if you are serious about going there and you feel that connection, listen to what they say, and then maybe reconnect again and show them how you improved on what they gave you suggestions on to work on, because that shows that the private studio teacher, to them, that you're teachable. And I think a lot of times if a kid's teachable, I don't care where they're at walking in. For me, I can teach a kid and they'll listen. We got them, right? So be teachable if you're an 18-year-old, and be humble, humility, and and enjoy your journey. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and make a lot of them.
Yeah, because you're going to, whether you like it or not. It's part of life. And I am so glad that you were able to share your story, DJ, because I tell you, you have shown the transformational process that can happen for every person that is exposed to the arts and decides to pick it up. I'm just really, I see the power of other people in your life, and I think that's. And I am glad to have you out in the world making the same sort of impact on other young people.
That is so gracious. I don't even know how to say thank you to that. But, now I'd like to, if anyone is listening that is an alumni, I think that we have an obligation right now and always to give back to those people that help us. I'm certainly say this with full humility, that any way that you can, and if it's more than financial, I realized very quickly that I can't write big checks, right? But how can I help Western? Maybe by exposing kids that are looking at schools, maybe get Western on the map, right? If you're in that kind of position. So everybody has a thing in a way that they can give back to this amazing place that got us our start. I think we owe a lot back. So there's my 2 cents. So.
Very good. Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being on the podcast. And thank you all those viewers and listeners out there that are tuning in to our very first podcast. We plan to have other alumni from the college departments on the podcast. And we hope that you continue, as DJ said, to support not only our departments and schools, but also the university itself. So until the next episode, stay safe, take care, and God bless.